All right, so I wanted to do a little Q&A. I got a lot of questions. People kind of wrote in, and I think that they would be helpful to hear, especially for those of you that are exploring, interested in, curious about, hesitant about the journey into sobriety. So maybe you'll find something here that is helpful. This is just my experience. Different for everyone. But, all right, so the first question is just, how the hell? A sharper word than that. Which was, I want to answer this question because that is what I thought forever. Like, what? Like, how? What? Like, just bamboozled, flabbergasted. So just want to name that it can feel like that. It can feel like absolutely like so inaccessible. And that's normal. That's really how I felt until the very end. You'll have to listen to my story that I just shared, and you'll hear about how that kind of came about. But I was definitely, how the hell? I was definitely that. I had that mentality. I thought it was really interesting too. I was working in a rehab, so I've taught in lots of rehabs and prisons and stuff. I love it. But I was talking with this young kid, and he was really confiding in me, which was really beautiful. He hadn't been talking to anybody there. He was like not happy to be there. I had dreadlocks back at the time, so I think somehow he was like, okay, she looks cool. But anyway, he asked me, he's like, never, like, you don't drink a little bit or like puff a little bit? And I'm like, no, I don't. And he just looks at me and he goes, what do you do all day? That's what he said to me. What do you do all day? And I was like, oh my God, my days are so full. Like, I do so much more than sit there and think about drugs and alcohol. But it was just interesting to be on the flip side of that and be speaking to somebody who was it was so inaccessible, and remembering how that was me for so long, with that really big bubble around me of being able to see anything being different. So if that's you right now, which you're listening to this, so that bubble is lessening a little bit. But yeah, just, you don't know what you don't know. You can't know what you don't know yet. So keep going. Somebody asking me about the first 90 days. How did you get the first 90 days? And did I relapse? And I had many 90 days, and I relapsed in all of them besides one. And normally I relapsed way before that. I would typically not even make it to 30 days. But I relapsed every single time I tried until the last time. Hopefully, this will continue on. That's part of the journey. That's part of the process for a lot of people. I know that it feels like failure, and it's not. Actually, the definition of addiction, there's like 5 little bullet points, and one of them is it's a relapsing condition. Like, it's textbook. It's part of it. And we really like to flagellate ourselves that we failed, but it is what it is. And if we can learn from it, if we can stay out of the shame, then we have a potential and possibility to learn from it. And then we have more clues moving forward. We have more traction on what happened, what didn't happen, what could have happened. And they're really powerful. I think I needed all of mine. And not all of them did I learn from, but some of them I did. So the wise thing to do, the wisdom of a relapse, is to get really curious about it and to try to learn from it and to stay out of the shame about it. Because when we're in the part of our brain that proliferates shame, we can't access the part of our brain that helps us create new patterns, helps us to problem solve. So they're actually at odds from each other in many different ways. So keep that in mind. I do have a video too called The Wisdom of a Relapse that I did a couple years ago that might be really helpful. AA or NA? Yes. I was mainly in AA, and I went through, God, I was in and out for like a decade. I remember being so mortified and terrified. I was court ordered whenever I first started going in Lake Tahoe. California. I remember walking up a snowy road, terrified to walk into this place. But I was in and out of AA a lot in different places all over the country. They are all so different. Just note that. They're all so different. I fought it. I hated it until I got far enough away to realize that it wasn't that I was hating. It was my stubbornness overall. The program has a lot of dogma. There's a lot of challenges with it. There's a lot of archaic language, religiosity in it, patriarchy in it. But really, in the beginning, often, I was anyway, looking for any excuse to not belong. Any excuse to be like, I don't need to be here. This isn't for me. So it didn't take much for me to find things to be, it directed my attention away from me in order to point the finger. And that's what blame does when it's like, it's this place, it's this partner that's wrong, it's this job that's wrong, it's this place that's wrong, it's this meeting that's shitty. And that's something that you learn along the way. I don't go to AA anymore. I found other semblances of community. I think one of the main pieces that's so important of it is the big sense of community, which is so necessary. And I really needed it in the beginning. And I eventually kind of came to terms with it and started to go and found some really good friendships and a lot of support in it. It's very important that we can go somewhere and we can speak honestly about ourselves and not have people cringe. That sounds intense, but whenever we're being open and sharing about ourselves, it needs to be met. And often, whenever we're first getting sober, we don't have a lot of good things to say about ourselves, or we haven't really been acting out of our highest integrity. But we need to be able to speak our truth and have it met. And it's not only met in places where people are dealing with the same things, it's held. And it's like, me too. And whenever you begin to realize that what you went through not only is okay to share, but is actually helpful in some cases, that shame begins to wither. And, I think Brene Brown says that shame dies when stories are told in safe places. Something like that. But it's very, very true that it cannot survive being spoken. Shame cannot survive being spoken and being held. So that is a really big power for that. Also, I did a program with Nikki Myers called the Yoga of the 12 Steps after I'd been sober for a little bit. And she took the 12 steps. She's an incredible woman. She took the 12 steps and retaught them through yoga terms. It was like a language that I could understand. And I was like, oh, this is all great. And so that was really helpful too. Sometimes just the way that we hear things. I have lots of cringes against some certain things that easily trigger me, but when it was brought into me in a new way, it was really helpful. Same as there's like Buddhist AA meetings, there's secular AA meetings, there's queer AA meetings, there's lots of different things. There's also lots of different types of programs out there now. So you can find something that works better. It doesn't have to be AA, which is amazing. And keep looking until you find your community and realize that you might be trying to divide yourself from community as well. Like that we have that part of us that wants to think that we're different. So trying to find a place where you feel like, okay, while knowing that part might be alive too. All right. And this next question, how did the voices in your head change? I really love that. And, some of them I haven't heard from. A lot of them I still do. A lot of them I hear from quite often. The ones that have been the most damaging and harmful for me, I don't. The ones that are telling me to pick up the bottle, I don't. I never thought they would go away, but they did. But often the things that I hear, the self-doubt, the self-criticism, things like this, I still hear them, and some things they really take hold of me. And then sometimes I hear them and I can say, hey, I see you, and not get bombarded by them, like not let them take the reins. There's a little story that I'll share very briefly called Tea with Mara, and whenever the Buddha was getting enlightened, under the Bodhi tree, he's sitting there, he's like just trying to be good, trying to meditate, trying to do his thing. There was a demon god called Mara that kept coming and saying, like whispering in his ear and being like, who do you think you are? And then, you know, whispering all these doubts. He'd also come dressed as like really lusty women, or like, hey, the party's over here, like trying to distract him. All of these different ways, all of these different voices. Mara would come disguised as all of these different voices trying to knock Buddha off of his presence, off of his stillness. And eventually the Buddha, you know, he had tried to fight, he had tried to flee, all of these things. And eventually he said, pour Mara a cup of tea. So then whenever the voices came, he would say, let's have a cup of tea. And what this means is like, what do you want? I'm listening, because there is messages in them. There is something that we can learn about ourselves, but we don't have to believe our mind. We don't have to believe Mara. We can hear what's being said and we don't have to believe it. Like, newsflash, we don't have to believe our thoughts. Wow. Not always easy to do. And another piece of the story that I really love is that Buddha gets enlightened. But Mara doesn't quit coming. And that's such probably the most important part of the story, is that Mara continues to come. And the tea continues to be poured. And likely the Buddha gets more adept and quicker and more graceful about having the kettle ready. You know, like feeling like this might be a triggering situation and probably something is going to happen. Let's get the tea ready. And that means that we just begin to recognize and familiarize ourselves with these other voices. IFS is something called internal family systems, and it's a really beautiful therapeutic model. I really recommend that you look at. And what it is speaking to is that we have this whole family inside of us. We have many, many different parts. Our voices are many different parts of self. They're different wounded parts, sad parts, pissed off parts, manager parts, all have different roles, and they're all in service somehow. Even though they're misguided and it's not helpful on the outside, like they're trying to be helpful in ways. You think about the part of us that wants to drink. It's trying to solve a problem, and the drinking did solve a problem for a long time. I know it did for me. You know, drinking's really the solution, but it wasn't helpful, but it was a solution to a problem of insecurity, of loneliness, of whatever. Without going too far into this, in a nutshell is that there are many, many different parts of us, and the more that we can get to know them, familiarize ourselves with them, they don't take us by surprise and like all of a sudden grab the reins. It's like, oh, there's my friend, my enemy, Mara. There's my friend, my enemy, my inner child that is about to throw a tantrum. Here's my da-da-da-da-da. And I say my friend, my enemy, because I'm going to weave in one more thing here. The Dalai Lama, he spoke to the Chinese, which are the people who have put him, exercised him, and caused lots of pain to him and his people. And he calls the Chinese when they're brought up, he says, my friend, my enemy. Always realizing that there's something to be open to. There's something to learn here. There's something that we can, something to be gathered, something to be gained. So those voices, rather than trying to eradicate them, and did they go away, or trying to get rid of them, it's like, can we familiarize ourselves enough to know them so that they don't take over? Like the more you know keep your friends close and your enemies closer, kind of something like that. My friend, my enemy. Okay, that was a bit of a ramble, but I hope that these helped. I have another list of a few questions that I'll answer in another video. Let me know if you have any additional questions, if this was helpful, and yeah, reach out. I run a program called Emerge Recovery. It's an incredible psychoeducational program. We go through lots of different modalities, including Buddhism, neuroscience, modern psychology, modern psychological insights, community. We go through it together. We meet 4 times a week for 8 weeks, and it's very intensive and it's very beautiful. It's shifting. I'm also getting ready to run a subset program called the Wisdom of the Shadow, and that's where we are exploring some of our darker emotions: envy, shame, anger, grief, and my friend, my enemy, seeing what we can gather from there. Because we have evolved with all of these emotions. Everything is there for a reason. Everything is in service, even though it doesn't feel like it all the time. There's something to be gained, something to be gathered. So if you're interested in either one of those, you can check the link in the bio. All right, hope that was helpful. If you're enjoying these classes, then I want to invite you to my membership service, CCY Studio. This is where we get to explore with longer classes, full-length classes, and we get to investigate not only more into the physical body and longer shavasanas, but also yogic and Buddhist philosophy, and more time to marinate and percolate with all of it. Also just putting up a new asana library, and this has about 10 of the core poses and really intricate ways and investigations to put it not only in your body, but also some teaching tips. So if you're a teacher, this is really valuable as well. So if you're interested, you get a 14-day free trial. You can cancel at any time, and I just encourage you to check it out. I think that it's a beautiful place to go a little bit deeper. So I hope to see you over there. You can find more details in the links below.